The past few days I was travelling around West Cork and Kerry on my way to a wedding and on my way back. And I just got to reflecting on the shameful betrayal by the Irish Catholics of their history and their faith. So the first place I was in was Bandon, and came across a beautiful grotto of Our Lady on the outskirts of Bandon, not far from the church, and it's pretty well maintained, and there's a rosary there every Thursday night at 8 o'clock. So then I made my way up to the church, and the church is magnificent. It's up on a hill, not in the town centre now, it's on the opposite side. And it looks down on, I presume it's the Protestant cathedral there. So I was just thinking about that, after hundreds of years of oppression, of our land being stolen off us, of our churches being stolen off us, of our forefathers being genocided in a so-called famine when Ireland was a net exporter of food. Our forefathers clung to the faith, and from about 1820 onwards, we started building our own churches again. And we have magnificent churches around Ireland. Bandon is just one. So then, yesterday morning I was on my way to a wedding down in South Kerry, and I passed through Famine. So as I was passing the church, I noticed that it was called the Daniel O'Connell Memorial Church of the Holy Cross. So I stopped and I went back and took a few pictures of the church, and its history is just absolutely stunning. It was built between late 1800s, and it was opened in 1902 after a bit of difficulty in raising the funds. And again, it was the idea of one of the parish priests there, and he wanted to call it the Daniel O'Connell Memorial Church, because Daniel O'Connell redefined Irish politics and played a huge role in Catholic emancipation and in regaining the rights of Catholics after hundreds of years of oppression. Now, the church also is the burial place for the remains of Monsignor Hugh O'Flaherty, who's another powerful man and a Kerry man, born outside Valencia, but I think he was raised in Killarney, and they have a beautiful memorial to him in Killarney. But as I was thinking about this, if you go around the different towns, it's very easy to spot the Catholic churches because they're usually built on a hill, and the spires are magnificent. So for instance, I was coming back this morning and I was coming through Fermoy, and I just thought it was coming near 10 o'clock, and I thought to myself, wonder would be mass in the church. So I just was coming into Fermoy and I looked up where was the church, and I could see the spire, and I knew exactly where it was, and I just followed up, and I was just in on time. Mass was just starting, 10 o'clock. Beautiful priest, Father Eamon, beautiful homily, got communion on the tongue, and a decent crowd, and another magnificent church, So then I was thinking when we got our the rights to build our own churches again after hundreds of years of oppression, our ancestors clearly wanted to make a statement, and so they built the churches magnificently. The one in Tramore now is absolutely incredible church, and again, it stands head and shoulders over anything. If you're traveling around and you look up, you'd see it. And what it often strikes me is, I live in Dunmore East, and as I'm travelling on the road between Dunmore East and Tramore, you'll see it there, and you'll see it compared to the Protestant church, which is probably older. but it's just stunning. And yet, what I got to reflecting on was the shame of our generation, that we were passed on this legacy of brilliant churches, brilliant faith, and we've let it all slip away. Imagine we voted for same-sex marriage, and we voted to murder babies in the womb, and we've the most egregious abortion laws now in the world. And if we don't feel a sense of grievous shame about having betrayed God, betrayed ourselves, betrayed all future generations, and particularly betraying our forefathers that went before us, we've no shame in us. And we have to stand up now and fight, because like all of it is, from the Reformation on, from the French Revolution, the World War I, World War II, communism in Russia, it's all about crushing the truth of Jesus Christ. It's all about crushing the Catholic Church. And books have been written about the infiltration of the church, like, we've Taylor Marshall's Infiltration, we've Ralph Martin's Church in Crisis, and we've a new one out now, Father Charles Moore, Murder in the 33rd Degree, and that's a brilliant book. I'm only starting reading it now, but I'm really looking forward to it, because it's an insider story on what was happening in the Vatican in the era of from the Vatican Council on. So we know like that the church is under assault, and we're under assault, and we go to funerals and masses, or funerals and weddings now, and we see people having a clue what they're even doing there, and they don't realize the power of prayer. They don't realize the true presence of Jesus in the Eucharist. And we've brought up these generations of young people that haven't got a clue, and we've allowed the education system to destroy them. So I just think that this is just a short video, like as a reflection on our shameful history in the last 60 years, where we've allowed all of this to wither away. But then, am I without hope? No, because hope is eternal and God is in control. And as Father James Maudsley, a brilliant priest, says, Satan is the big loser, and Satan can only lose, and anybody that doesn't choose Jesus is going to be a loser as well, because they risk going to hell for all eternity. So we have an obligation to stand up and fight for our faith, just as our forefathers had to do for hundreds of years. And if we do, we'll be victorious. There's no doubt about that. Like, we will win, because the forces of evil can never sustain themselves, and the forces of God, the grace of God, the love of God, the power of God has to win, because there can only be one winner. And we have to look around at our history. Our history has been squelched now in our schools. Our children are not being taught history. They're being taught all sorts of crazy ideologies, and that any old faith will do. But of course, that's absolutely, brutally untrue. And it's a brutal abuse of our precious children. And we have to fight for every single aspect of it. We have to start fighting against our priests, telling them, like, we want proper preaching, we want proper homilies, and we want to stand up and fight for what's going on, against what's going on in the schools. Like, we're in Pride Month now, which is the month of the Sacred Heart, and we have to stand up and be counted and remember our history. And all we have to do is look around at the beautiful churches that we were given after our forefathers had to go out to Mass Rocks and all. And we'll be back out to Mass Rocks if we don't mind the treasure of our faith. And when you think about the abortion referendum, 66% of Irish people voted to murder babies in the womb. And they don't care if there was no churches. Like, they won't even bless themselves when they're passing the church. They won't even say a prayer. They won't even go in to the church. And the idea of going to confession and being in a state of grace to receive the Eucharist, like, I mean, the amount of sacrilegious communions at funerals and weddings, like, is just shocking. So it's a reflection, like, I mean, you really, when you're going around and you see the beautiful grottos everywhere around, beautiful churches everywhere around, and they're empty. And the priests haven't even got true faith because they're not prepared to fight. And they ceded the whole thing when the vicious oppression of COVID-19 came in, allowed their churches to be closed, took out holy water. I mean, it's just dreadful. And unless we start to push back and resist with all our might and with all the power of God, praying as we've never prayed before, praying the rosary, making sure we're in a state of grace ourselves, that if we're called by God, that we'll go to heaven. So it's a plea to remember who we are as a people, that we cannot live without God. Like this notion like that I can be an atheist, like it's just complete and utter nonsense. There's no sense whatsoever to it. Like it's a complete load of BS. So I might just finish with a prayer. And great saints teach us that we must stand up and fight. And St. Teresa of Avila, a great doctor of the church, is a powerful saint. And this is her beautiful prayer, which I love. God alone suffices. Let nothing disturb you. Let nothing frighten you. All things are passing away. God never changes. Patience obtains all things. Whoever has God lacks nothing. God alone suffices. So clearly the opposite of that is also true. Anybody that doesn't have God has absolutely nothing, you know. Whereas if we have God, we lack nothing. May today there be peace within. May you trust God that you are exactly where you are meant to be. And you're meant to be here fighting for the faith and fighting against those who try to oppress the faith with lies and propaganda. May you not forget the infinite possibilities that are born of faith. May you use those gifts that you have received and pass on the love that has been given to you. May you be content knowing you are a child of God. Let this presence settle into your bones and allow your soul the freedom to sing, dance, praise and love. It is there for each and every one of us. St. Teresa of Avila, Feast Day, 15th of October. God bless, good night and thank you.